Hello and welcome to the sixth video in our lecture on access control policies and mechanisms. In the previous video, we wrapped up our discussion of a kind of policies called discretionary access control policies. In this video, we're starting to discuss the second kind, namely the mandatory access control policies. In this context, we typically see systems that are organized according to a so-called multi-level security approach. So in this approach, every resource or object is assigned a different level of security. And similarly, the users or subjects are also assigned to a different level of security. So we have a double hierarchy for the subjects and the objects. And I'm not going to read the general definition of MLS here given in this RFC. I'll let you look at it. But basically, the idea is that once we have a hierarchy of security levels for both objects and subjects, the policy is going to specify, according to this level, who is allowed to access which kind of security level for the objects. So the thing to realize is that in such multi-level security systems, there is a security level that is assigned to both objects and subjects. So this is done using, say, a label. Each label has a particular label. But the interesting thing is, even though we use the same labels for object and subject, these labels are called differently. So in the case of objects, the label is called a security classification, whereas in the case of subjects, the label is called a security clearance. So this is a typical system used in a military organization. So for example, in a US Department of Defense, they have 4 labels, say, unclassified, which is the lowest level of security, and then going up through the hierarchy, you have confidential, secret, and top secret. So these are the labels that are assigned to the security levels. So again, a document could be labeled secret. In this case, we say that the security classification of that document is secret. On the other hand, a subject could have a security clearance of, say, top secret. So again, the same 4 labels in this case would be used for objects and subjects, but be careful to use the right terminology when using one of these 4 security labels to object, you would call that the classification of the resource, whereas for a subject, you would call that the clearance of the user or that person. So now that we have those different levels of security, each given a label, we have to assign clearances to subjects. And so, for example, to get a secret clearance, you would be subjected to a routine background check. But to get a higher security clearance, like top secret, you have to do a much more extensive background check. So in terms of notation, if O stands for an object and S stands for a subject, then their different labels would be called L of O, the label of this object, and L of S, the label of this subject. So, but in the case of an object, the label again is called the object's classification, whereas in the case of a subject, the label is called his or her clearance. So in short, a multi-level security system is a force of access control policy that is needed when you have different subjects that are in a hierarchy, say, such as in the military hierarchy, and they access to a bunch of resources that are also classified at different levels of security based on who has a need to know for which particular resource. So uh, outside of military systems or other classified government organizations, you could also apply multi-level security to the business setting. So for example, you could have documents that are accessible to the general public. So they would be given, say, a public label, or it could be a document that's only accessible to people within the company. This could be called confidential label. And then you could have a more sensitive document that are only accessible to the management within the company. And then you could have even more confidential or strategic document that are only available to senior management only. So you can see here this hierarchy of security levels. This is the one listed for the documents, but also those labels would apply to the subject as well, from the general public to the people in the management, the C-suite. So another application of MLS security policy would be for a network firewall. So let's say that you're administering a network for a large company, then you would have your network divided into, say, subnetworks or local area networks. And so you could assign different security label to each local area networks and then groups of networks. And then you could also assign labels to maybe um, the autonomous system, which is the name of sub networks in the internet that are grouped together under one authority. And then you could have another label for the entire internet. And then you could let packets filter in and out based on the origin or destination of those packets using these different levels of security, those different labels, and so on and so forth. You could imagine a similar multi-level security system applied in the medical field with different medical professionals and administrators having access to different kinds of information. Similarly, in a database system, we could have multiple levels of security and so on and so forth. So in general, just keep in mind the multi-level security approach is not so much a technical or implementation system. It's really a kind of a policy, and it's really more of a legal structure than a technical structure.